And the second article that I want to look at is how did civilizations collapse? And as you can see, this is a BBC article, so it's not it it is historical in the research that's been done, but the person whose work we're going to be looking at, Luke Kemp, he's currently at Cambridge, and he's at the Centre for the Study of Existential Risk. So this is not history because he's not with the history department, but he uses history and analyzes history in order to find the linkage between past civilizational collapse to future civilizational collapse. So this is an interesting thesis because it's going to give you quite a technical understanding of why civilizations do collapse. And due to space, I'm going to go through the 6 points that he comes through here, and we're going to look at the article together through sharing my screen. But the article is linked here below, so if it's easier for you, put it up on your screen and we'll go through it together. So his thesis on why civilizations collapse are divided into 6 sequences: climatic change, environmental degradation, inequality and oligarchy, complexity, external shocks, randomness/bad luck. And I want to emphasize the last point because I think the more mature you become as a historian, the more and more you realize that so much of history and so much of the huge, complex events that we try to establish causality for as historians are actually just based on contingency, just based on randomness, bad luck, and a bunch of different factors mixed together. So I think sometimes historians, especially if you're still at school, or you having to write very short essays in not much time, they'll emphasize one factor over another. But of course, it's quite difficult to actually do this and establish something so convincingly when you're only looking at one factor. So when you're answering the why section of this question, make sure you follow what Kemp is doing and try to demonstrate that it's a mix of different factors. And of course, civilizations are so different from each other. There's no set way of saying, oh, a civilization has collapsed because of this. It is, of course, due to many different factors. Some of them we'll probably never be able to determine. And I just wanted to include the last point that he made. Despite the abundance of books and articles, we don't have a conclusive explanation as to why civilizations collapse. What we do know is this: the factors as highlighted above can all contribute. And the idea of collapse as a tipping point phenomenon is really interesting. It's almost as if like it's a seesaw and you're adding more and more and more, and eventually it will collapse. So let's share the screen because this is quite a fun article. Great, here it is. So the Roman Empire is one big example that he mentions. And this is great empirical evidence that you can use. So, for example, collapse is often quick and greatness provides no immunity. So you can see 4.4 million square kilometers in 390. But only 86 years later, it reaches zero. So that's one way that you can actually quantify collapse because, of course, collapse is a what we would call a discursive construct. It's not something that you can say, yes, it has collapsed. No, it has not collapsed. It's not a binary switch like on and off, one or zero, but it's a process. It's a gradual tipping process, as Kemp has explained. So you can say, actually, for me, I would define a civilization's collapse as when it no longer has any territory, when it no longer has a government that functions, when it no longer has people who say that they belong to this entity. So this is a great example to use, and I think probably one of the key ones that you should mention. At the same time, of course, there are different examples that are worth including. And the graphic that we looked at in our previous video about that Kemp has provided here is going to be really useful for this.